Unchecked immigration from Africa and the Middle East is a growing problem for all of Europe, but in Sweden, the problem is even worse. This is according to One America's Pearson Sharp, and he explains how the most tolerant country in the world is struggling to stay ahead of this surge in violence from so-called refugees.
Sweden, a land of opportunity and freedom. The Swedes enjoy world-class healthcare, education, and one of the strongest economies in the EU, with some of the lowest debt. Swedish cities are also some of the safest in the world, and residents can walk home at night without fear of rape or being attacked. Sadly, though, all of that is changing. Sweden's once peaceful population is under assault as migrants from the Middle East pour into the Scandinavian haven by the hundreds of thousands. Crime in the country has skyrocketed as Muslim immigrants gather in the large cities and suburbs, creating areas where residents and even police are afraid to go. Once unheard of, grenade attacks are now constant threats to those living near these refugee centers. In January of 2018, a man in his 60s was killed and a 45-year-old woman was injured when a migrant tossed a grenade into a metro station in Stockholm. Rival gangs from Somalia are frequent culprits, and a few weeks later in the western city of Gothenburg, a hand grenade was thrown inside a house while 7 people were at home. Gang violence in the same city also claimed the life of a 4-year-old girl who was killed when a car bomb exploded. And in the peaceful town of Uppsala, a Dutch exchange student was hit with a stray bullet when refugees carried out an execution-style killing at a pizza restaurant.
We are not satisfied with immigration politics. We want them to have better control. We have people that have not been allowed to stay in Sweden, that the police have no idea where they are. And we want the Swedish government to take control.
In Malmö, a grenade was thrown at a police station, exploding outside. In Sweden's history, there hasn't been a single case of a native Swede carrying out a grenade attack. Every attack with grenades has been committed by a migrant or refugee gang member. And yet police in Sweden are forbidden from reporting the ethnicity or background of criminals. And so targeting the problem, immigrants from Africa and the Middle East, remains impossible. The media helps referring to no-go zones as go-go zones. However, police and fire departments know better. In Uppsala, migrants torched some 50 cars in November of 2017. But despite repeated calls for help from residents, firefighters weren't able to enter the area for over 3 hours. When they finally arrived, they had to be escorted by heavily armed police using riot gear and machine guns. Continuing Sweden's trend of ignoring its migrant problem, Deputy Prime Minister Isabella Löfven downplays the growing problems with rape and violence, instead promoting the world's first feminist government. But can feminists continue defending these migrants when over 90% of Sweden's gang rapists are foreigners and so-called refugees? Meaning, if there were no migrants in Sweden, cases of violent rape would drop by more than 90%.
Have to stop the immigration, because otherwise we will have a Sweden there where there are no Swedes, because it comes so much people and we don't breed enough Swedish people ourselves. So in maybe 20-30 years or something, we will be a minority in our own country.
Professor of Criminal Law at Stockholm University, Christian Diesen, says that cultural factors play a role. He says African and Middle Eastern migrants often have an inherent hatred for women and view them simply as sexual objects for their own enjoyment. This is clear in the case of Smalier Hassan, a 30-year-old man from Somalia and convicted rapist who claimed that raping Swedish girls was his God-given right. After being convicted of rape and numerous sexual offenses since 2010, instead of being deported, the Swedish government astonishingly decided to grant him permanent residency. In January of 2018, he attacked numerous female employees at a psychiatric hospital in Vaxio, declaring that Swedish women are good for just one thing. But politicians are doubling down on these permissive policies with a massive 54,000 square foot mosque now under construction in the heart of Stockholm. Migrants enjoy complete religious freedom in Sweden, but residents say the migrants are intolerant of other religions and should be given the same rights they give to Christians in their own countries.
It's also Middle East and Africa that is always overrepresented when it comes to violent crimes. And my guess is that it's the same kind of groups that today are rioting around Stockholm.
Even many of the migrants themselves say the unchecked immigration in Sweden is a problem.
Of course I place full responsibility on the government. They are simply bringing more and more people here, and it's destroying the country. It's even destroying the whole of Europe. But still, they keep bringing them here. I am a foreigner myself, but we have not had these numbers before. They can't assess the people. They don't even know their ages.
The problem is compounded by the growing number of migrant and Muslim-friendly leaders in the government who have launched an international effort to dismiss the rise in crime with media and state-funded PR campaigns. Sweden's prime minister has denied the existence of no-go zones despite testimonies from residents and police, as crime in Sweden has risen dramatically above the European average. Police have no support either, as Peter Springer, a Swedish police officer, is being investigated after claiming that, in his experience, most crime in Sweden is committed by immigrants. While the problem is growing exponentially, migrants are still a minority in the country, for now. But as hundreds of thousands of refugees continue to bring violence to Sweden's shores, it's not clear how long it will be before native Swedes are forced to seek asylum from these asylum seekers. Pearson Sharp, One America News.